All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 3:01, and I'm going to begin by calling the roll of the committee members. Dave Cahill.
Here.
Barbara McKenzie.
Here.
Deborah Doyle.
Here.
I'm also very happy to say that we have a new member of the staff who is joining us for the first time today. Myrna, would you introduce her to us, please? And please remember to put on your microphone when you speak.
Well, good afternoon. I am happy to have our first in-person meeting for the Finance Committee. And today we have a guest that will be with us, once in a while, as she is new to the budget and accounting and financial services team. And her name is Jessica Rialto, no, Raitano. And she just started last month. And she's our new accountant. So we've been looking forward to filling this position for some time, and we're happy that she's joined us. She's come with lots of accounting experience and in the private sector that is very much already making wonderful contributions to our team. And we look forward to working with her and having her on our team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Welcome.
Thank you.
Would you like to say anything to the committee about your background or what you've seen in the few weeks that you've been here at the library? And if you do, please use your microphone.
I'm just happy to be here. I've learned so much already, and there's a lot to learn, and I'm excited. And yeah, everybody's been so great.
We have wonderful staff, and we're happy to welcome you to it. So we are streaming and recording the meeting, and for that reason, I wanted to take just a moment to review the little microphones that we have here. I think we'll get used to it pretty quickly. When you're going to speak, please push the button. When you see the green light, it means it's picking up. Mike has told me that in addition to picking up our voices, these microphones are also really good at picking up the sound of paper rustling. So we'll all try to be aware of that, and I'm sure we'll get better over time. So let's see, I see no announcements. Public appearances. Do we have any members of the public who wish to address the committee regarding matters not on the agenda, or did we receive any email communications that should be shared now?
We did not receive any email communications, and I do not see any members of the public.
Okay. Well, then we're going to move on to our principal discussion item, which is the financial reports for the third quarter of the fiscal year. As I know you all remember, and for the benefit of anybody who might be watching the recording at a later point, we agreed that on a quarterly basis, we're going to take a bit of a deeper dive into the numbers. I think we're all feeling more comfortable as Myrna has continued to take charge of the department, and we're getting more accurate and timely information, but it's still appropriate for us to look at items in more detail. And that's what we're going to be doing today. So I think before I say anything, Myrna, I appreciate the written summary that you gave, and I'm going to invite you to open our discussion with your review of where we are now, 9 months into the year.
point, thank you. At this point, we're 4% greater than we were at the same time last year. So we are on track to meet our approved targets under sales tax. Under expenditures,
I'm sorry. Could we stop there and just take any questions from the committee? I realized that the property tax second payments were due on the 10th. It's only the 17th. So I don't know that we have a full accounting of that, but it sounds like unofficially we have over $10 million.
yes, over $10 million.
Because that looks like it would bring us very close to our target. Are you expecting that property taxes will meet or exceed the budgeted 24.7?
I think they'll meet or be, yes, our targeted property tax. We do still have some late payments that come in through June, so we're not quite done yet.
Okay.
The bulk of the funds are in.
And with the sales tax, we're 7 months in, we'd expect to be 58-59% of our budget. We're a little bit over that. Again, you're expecting that we'll be at or above the budgeted figure.
Yes, our monthly receipts that have been coming in have been very true to the cycle. And so again, through March and the month of March, we're really strong compared to last year. So
Okay.
I'm confident about that.
That's great. And yes, Deborah.
This is just an ancillary question, but with the projected state deficit, are you being more cautious about next year? I mean, we didn't actually talk about that in our budget meetings, but it seemed that you were being very careful. Have you been keeping your eye on that?
Sure. Primarily what drives the state deficit are capital gains. It's so as capital gains go, those receipts tend to fluctuate. Our revenues are the major ones, of course, property tax and sales tax. And on both ends, we need to be cautious about them because of the national increases in interest rates that are affecting home sales. We need to watch what has been promising for Sonoma County is that in the region, property taxes have held well compared to other counties. And also January was really slow in terms of home sales, but it's been doing better for a month of February and the month of March. Hopefully, that is the, beginning of the season for home sales. So again, we have to keep an eye on that. But yes, definitely need to be cautious about it. The projections for revenues for next year under property tax, given that the reports have been that there will be growth, but not at the same rate that we've experienced over the last 1 or 2 years. So I have projected an increase, but a slowdown. Under sales tax, same. And we just need to monitor those. And I'd like I've been doing is at mid-year, check those figures with our county partners and other reports to see if we need to make any adjustments up or down on our revenue and expenditures. And that'll be my segue into expenditures if there are no other.
Any other questions, Barbara, Dave? Okay, all right. Please go ahead.
So under salaries and benefits, expenditures were $18.2 million, which is 65% of our total budget. And this is also adjusted for the one-time $1.4 million of the one-time unfunded accrued liability that we made back in August. And so we're seeing savings because of normal attrition. And what you do have the details of the property tax and sales tax by account, and you can see that our extra help is pretty robust in that area. I think we may have budgeted a little lower than we needed to. However, the savings in the overall permanent positions have offset those costs. So we do expect to be within our salaries and benefits budget. One thing that you may have noticed is that have been able to allocate salaries and benefits per our major revenue source allocation policy. It's been a work in progress. So the vision, dental, and life benefits that have been historically been charged 100% to property tax under HR have not been allocated across all divisions. So that is still pending and will be done by year end. So we'll see adjustments by year end on that point. But overall, salaries and benefits are expected to be within our approved budget. Services and supplies, we're at $8.1 million or 58% of our total budgeted expenditures. And like I've mentioned at the mid-year, and I still believe that there will be savings overall in services and supplies by at least $500,000. I did receive some inquiries about not special accounts, but certain accounts in our budget, and those that the finance committee have asked about in the past, which are our rents and leases, and our expenditures are 86%, which is over our 75% mark. But that's because we pay the month. That's so, for example, we need to pay the May rent in the month of April to meet our deadlines. Also, there's been an increase in rental equipment for minor projects that I've seen, for example, a rental of a vehicle. But we'll continue to monitor this budget so that we're within our budget. Utilities, here's PG&E monthly bills have still continued to be over $50,000. And the library is working with PG&E to implement cost savings. And one is to switch to the different rate schedules for different locations. But, here's an area where I think that overall, strategically, the library can look into some ways to reduce our costs and reduce our footprint as well in this area.
May I ask a question? Has there been any discussion, I realize this is not your department, but any discussion of installing solar panels on some of our locations to reduce? Yeah.
There's actually a granting process with Sebastopol to put solar panels there. Dave Teixeira, the facilities manager.
I'm sorry, Mike, could you put on your microphone? I know
I did the one thing that I asked everybody else, so I apologize. As I said, Sebastopol has already been awarded a grant to put solar at their building. And Dave Teixeira, our facilities manager, is always looking at ways to add efficiencies to our PG&E, whether that be switching out lighting systems to LED lights, working with the heat and thermostats, as well as solar is something that is always of interest to him, as it should be.
Where did the grant come from?
I believe it was this similar to what we got with Petaluma and the state grant. Thank you, Ray and Barbara. They were
The
getting.
problem is then you have to have a new roof to put the solar on, and since we don't own the buildings.
Microphone?
Oh, sorry. The problem is that, since we don't own the buildings and you have to have a new-ish roof to put solar on, that creates issues, yeah.
Understood. Dave, you have a question?
Yeah, Mike, what percentage of the total lighting that could be converted to LED has been converted to LED?
I would need to go back to Dave to get an accurate figure. I would say 75% plus of what we could has been. That's been a big project of his and his teams for the last few years.
Any other questions? Okay, sorry. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. And under training services, I just wanted to provide an explanation of what these are. These are charges for professional training such as legal compliance for supervisors and managers. This year, we really invested in diversity, equity, and inclusion training for all staff day, and conferences for professional development. This is well under our budgeted amount, but we do have a couple of annual conferences that are at the end of the fiscal year. So we're still expecting expenditures to be recorded there. Under consulting services, these are services such as the class and comp study that and in prior years, the staffing study that are in agreement with our union, as well as the bilingual assessments in order to qualify for bilingual pay, and budget communication support. So that was used to produce our budget workshop. So those are examples of that area. Other contract services, I know these are pretty general categories. And under here, we normally charge our copier contracts that are in the branches here at in our offices here, as well as cloud services, our English as a second language trainers, jail inmate services, IT network services, hold notices, translation services for our patrons, and temporary support. We've had some temporary support in the budget and accounting team. For example, we've had some long-term vacancies. And we've backfilled with some temp workers. It is expected that by year end, we will be within budget. Although we're at 83% now, we should be within budget by the end of the year. Under special department expenses. Yeah.
Can I ask you questions? I wanted to, since you mentioned training and consulting services, I wanted to just take a little closer look at those, Myrna.
Mhm.
As I think I've told you, these are of special interest to me because that was my professional background while I was still working. And I guess first a question. I understand through the allocation process that for most of our departments, the allocation is 60-40, right? Property tax versus sales tax. For the administrative department, it's I think 90-10. I'm looking at the budget figures in training 51225.
On what page are you on, Andy?
Well, I'm on page 7 for the property tax, Dave, and page 9 for the sales tax.
Account number.
51225. So I guess, first just an observation and then a question. The total budget for training services looks like it's about $187,000. That does not strike me as particularly robust for an organization of our size. especially now that conferences are resuming, and Erica in her weekly message talked about the value that she was getting. I would just, I'd like to be sure that we're encouraging and enabling our employees and staff to take advantage of learning opportunities so they can continue to expand their skills. But the question I have is, looking at the total number, it doesn't seem like a 60-40 split. It seems like it's much more heavily weighted toward property tax. And I was just wondering what might account for that.
So for example, a lot of these trainings are in the budget for HR. So the legal compliance, for example, for sexual harassment, or other trainings for management that are required by state sometimes, or, you know, or just best practices. Those and the trainings for staff day, and the diversity, equity and inclusion, all of those are contracts in HR. They are 90-10.
Okay, so even though many of the participants will be people from our whole organization, still allocated 90-10, which seems very conservative to me. And I think the Measure Y committee, I hope, will be happy with that. I mean, it seems, Mike, you have a puzzled expression there. Okay, right. I mean, it seems like you could say, hey, you know, staff is, you know, ultimately going to be getting the training, but this feels like, okay, we're taking a more conservative approach, allocating it to property tax. I'm okay with that. Anybody else have any question about that? Yeah, Barbara.
Well, just to your point about training, I believe that we have a policy that staff gets a certain allocation for training. And then on top of it, there's more money for conferences and so forth. So there is a kind of a internal policy about training. So I don't know how much flexibility people have in using that money, but I think quite a bit, don't they?
So the training you're speaking of, I believe, is within our MOU, and each staff member, I don't recall exactly the wording in the MOU, but most employees do get an annual allocation of professional development. And that is also budgeted in the HR division. And it's under its own account of professional development. The trainings that we just discussed are the conferences. Yeah.
Deborah?
Certainly commissioners can take advantage of training as well.
Yes. In next year's budget, you will see those funds are budgeted in the executives under executive services. So the allocation, it's over $2,000 per commissioner. And you should be getting a report, if you haven't already, as to where you are with that allocation.
Okay, but it sounds like, to my concern, on the surface, I'm looking at two things. One is, gee, the budget number is not that high. And two, here we are 3/4 of the way into the year, and we're only at, 51% of the budget on the property tax and 39% on the sales tax. But what I'm hearing you say is that some of the bigger expenses will be coming up in the months ahead.
Yes, but overall in services and supplies, there will be savings. Like I mentioned, there's going to be at least $500,000 in savings in services and supplies across many of these accounts. So that is what I did in the next fiscal year was there is a reduction actually in services and supplies to true up these budgets. So we hope to align our budget with our expenditures more accurately going forward.
All right, but and the final comment, and I'll let you get on, but Barbara, to your point, it sounds like this is built into the MOU as a possibility for employees. I'd like to feel confident that they're actually being encouraged to take advantage of it. And that's maybe a discussion we can have as a follow-up. Yeah, Mike.
If I may, I can say that staff are encouraged to use their staff development and make use of training, whether those be anything from free webinars, local trainings to paid web-based trainings to conferences as well. That comes from all the way from Erica division managers to managers. We send updates of trainings coming up and available conferences. That's something that's been worked into HR as well as just general announcements from the division managers as well.
I'm really glad to hear that, Dave.
Yeah, do these training funds lapse each year or do they roll over if not used?
I, under professional development, under the MOU, I do believe there is a fraction that does roll over,
Deborah.
not used, yeah.
One of the conferences that employees go to is the Public Library Association conference, and that only happens every other year. So the American Library Association conference happens every year, and that's in June, and so that screws up usually the budget a little bit. But and then there's the rural. I can't remember when the rural is. That's March, I think, something like that.
I think that one passed.
Yeah,
I
something
think
like that. But PLA only happens every other year.
Okay, well, thanks for clarifying. And Mike, thank you. I'm really glad to hear that is a top-down directive. I think it's really important that we're doing everything we can to support the professional development of staff.
Agreed. It's something, especially in this day and age, you need to continue expanding and growing and getting the education to stay current in an ever-changing environment. It is encouraged to continue that journey.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Myrna. Back to you.
Um, oh, special department. Oh, other contract services, like I said, this includes our copier machines, cloud services, English as a second language, jail inmate services, IT services, whole services, translation services for our patrons, and temporary support. Under special department expense.
I have a question. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I don't mean
that's
to keep
okay.
interrupting.
No,
you.
that's okay.
Maybe I'm going to encourage you to take a breath after each paragraph. If anybody
That's
has
fine.
any
That's what we're here for, to
questions.
have a discussion.
So you mentioned jail inmate services, and at the commission meeting last Wednesday, we heard about that great
Juvenile,
contract
for
that-
juvenile hall.
for juvenile hall. Yeah. Do we get any revenue for the services that we provide to jail inmates?
Yes, this one, in this particular case, it's the sheriff that pays for these services.
Okay, so although it shows up as an expense item under other contract services, there is some revenue
Mhm.
elsewhere in the budget that's offsetting some of this. And it is, you did note that even though we're above the 75% mark that we would be looking at, you feel like we'll be within budget by year end.
Yes.
Barbara.
Yeah, under this category, this is actually quite a bit more money in this category than training. I something like $730,000. I quickly added up. So I think there was some interest and some of the commissioners expressed about seeing maybe some detail under that, allocating to these different line items, just because it is a significant amount of money. I don't know.
Well, I think there is detail, for example, in a lot of these cases, like the copier contracts and other lengthy contracts do go to the commission for approval. Also, there are, the RFP, for example, that is out for diversity consulting is out. So you all can see what is asked for there. And then that contract should go before the commission for approval. So there's already detail out there provided. we could consider and provide detail that the finance committee or the commission would ask for.
Mike?
Yeah, if I may, 51803 is one of the big lines that IT uses for our contracts. On page 5 of the reports for the voucher payments over $50,000, this will actually kind of illustrate some of these big purchases on here. For instance, excuse me, on the fourth purchase, today's business solutions for $54,839 and change. That was one of said contracts. That's for our public printing, time management contracts. A few lines down from that is Searcy Dynex for $162,489.79. That is for our integrated library system. That is all our cataloging, discovery, circulation. That's another one. And moreover, Envisionware for another $68,706. That's our contract for our self-checks, our Hublet tablet stations, service and support contracts. What's not listed here is this is another line that we use for our AMS, and that is our networking support, our Cisco service contracts. I recently took the phone. Remember the phone contract? That's going to be coming out of this line, and that's one of the reasons why that line is going up next year. So when you mentioned $700,000, I think that a large chunk of that money is probably coming from the IT budget, of which part of that is illustrated right here in front of us today.
I appreciate you calling that out. And Barbara, I'm thinking that before we went to this more streamlined report view, we actually for several months had been looking at a summary of the expenses. Was that what you were recalling also?
No, I believe I just thought I heard some commissioners talk about at the budget workshop or whatever. We like to see more detail. I don't know. But that brings up a point, which is since there's some crossover in reporting on the voucher payment report, perhaps we could have the category indicated on the
Oh, sure.
voucher thing. Then we wouldn't have to guess.
Okay, the account. Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, because I mean, I think it would be, I hope it would not be too much work for you or for you, Jessica, but just looking at these 3 items that Mike called out, I mean, 220, we're like at $280,000. And it sounds like there are other big items that might not necessarily exceed the $50,000 threshold. But it would be helpful because at first glance, it feels like, gee, what is that? But in fact, it all makes sense. And so I think if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to ask it for next month. Would it be possible to give us a summary of who the vendors are in this one category, other contract services? Is that, Barbara, you're looking hesitant, would you?
Well, rather than the summary, I mean, we could just print out the expenses under that category. Look at them too much or.
Deborah?
I think one of the reasons why we went to this kind of a report was so that we would not have to look at all of the details.
Right.
Because we now have an established finance committee. And so perhaps we don't have to look at it every month. Perhaps we need to look at it every quarter or one,
Well, just to see
something
year
like
to
that.
date,
But yeah,
with this, at this point, it seems like.
but not every month.
Yeah, no. I'm not looking to make it a monthly thing, but I think
So I
it's,
can add, so this is what you have is your quarterly report here where you have the detailed property tax and sales tax. I can add another report for the other contract services.
if you could do that, and it's not going to be a huge burden, I think that would be helpful, because I think that's the kind of item that some commissioners might look at and go, well, what the heck are we doing? But in fact, I think with a little examination, it's really clear that these are all, not only very reasonable items, but in some cases, very reasonable items that we have already voted to authorize. So it's just connecting the dots there. Deborah?
Especially since we have several new commissioners, it would be nice to make
Yeah.
sure that they get the information they need as we walk through it. but we don't have to go back to the 40-page
No, no.
financial report.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Back to you.
Oh, so under special department expenses. Um, these are charges normally to programs and events and supplies. So when there's a vendor who teaches a class or does a performance, they're normally charged here. And, or if there are any supplies that we need for our special events, these are also charged here. And that's what drives the special departmental expense. Other services, currently in this fiscal year, there are no charges to other services. And in prior years, I noticed, I'm like, well, if this account is showing up, but we may have charged in the past. And I saw that it was a renewal of a subscription, of a survey platform subscription. Under that, so that's capital, that's services and supplies, and I'll go into capital. Capital expenditures are $671,000 approximately, or 9.3% of the capital budget. As you already know, Healdsburg branch and the Petaluma branch, there's some minor things that have started at the Healdsburg, but this project has been pushed into next fiscal year. And also this was also noted in the workshop for fiscal year 23-24 that the funds for these projects are being rebudgeted into next fiscal year. The total expenditures projected for June 30th are estimated to be under budget. And any savings as of June 30th, it will have an impact on our committed funds and our year end to our fund balance as well. Cash balances remain steady, reflecting our normal cash flow cycle. Property tax / general fund cash balance as of March 31 is $13,890,926. Under sales tax, the cash balance as of March 31 was $21,734,806. And our fund balance, as you can remember, on March 1, the commission approved mid-year recommendations to increase property tax revenues to reflect the certified values. And this had a positive impact on uncommitted fund balance. And it is reflected in the included statement of activity as of March in your packet. And the uncommitted fund balance as of March 31 under property tax is $8.7 million and under sales tax, $8.2 million. This will change again depending on year end closes or any underspending or revenue changes. And just wanted to give you a couple of updates. Is of course that the commission held its budget workshop for proposed fiscal year 23-24 budget on April 4th. Next Monday on April 24th, the proposed budget will be presented to the Measure Y Oversight Committee, as well as these third quarter reports on next Mondays. So with that concludes our quarterly report, unless there's any other question.
Barbara.
Number one, on the uncommitted fund balance, just I'm remembering that in our May meeting, we're going to have the talk about the 5-year plan, which will include those, just for the record, correct? Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes, I'm planning to discuss the 5-year forecast.
And secondly, I need to talk about a report that was not in our reports. If I may properly bring that up. I don't want to.
Which report are you referring to?
The report that we looked at many times in the past, which was about charitable, the gift donations and the, I don't remember exactly the title of the report, but it had to do with gifts and donations and had the Friends money on there. And if you'll bear with me, I just need to explain something. We were the ones from this committee that asked for that report to be clarified. And at that time, we were having some, I think, changes in personnel and accounting and stuff like that. So we kind of put that off as a project, that it hadn't been completed. And in my memory, it hadn't come back to us as a report all clarified about the Friends money and all that stuff. So what happened was last month at the Friends meeting, at least the Friends meeting that I went to, Julie Brown, the accounting manager, came to the Friends meeting and started talking about these unallocated funds. And it became very controversial and very confusing to everyone. And
The Roder Park Friends.
to the Roder Park Friends. And I tried to explain that these questions didn't come from the Friends, but they came from the Finance Committee, but the report hadn't come back to the Finance Committee. So it kind of, the procedure, the process broke down somewhere, you know, in there. So the Friends quite stirred up about this. The word mismanagement of funds was even brought up. And it was very hard. Some people got it and some people didn't get it. The point being that the money was spent, that requested by the librarian for the library, the money was spent, but instead of being charged to the Friends, it was paid for by the library. And rather than kind of clean up the accounting on that, this became a report that went back to the Friends, thinking that their $82,000 or whatever it was for Roner Park hadn't been spent. And included in that was a proposal for this money to be spent on something else, which the Friends could not approve of, but they could kind of comment on. Anyway, it was very confusing what happened. So it came back on the agenda just this morning. And the reason I'm bringing it up is there's some amount of urgency to this. The discussion was quite intense this morning. And someone has actually talked to somebody at the state, I guess, about 501c3s and allocation of, making everything very blurry and all this stuff. And I said, I had a Finance Committee meeting this afternoon. I was going to go back because we have not seen that report. It hasn't come back to us and we were the ones that asked about it. So I just want us to understand, maybe our Friends group is the only one who, is going to react to this. I don't know if all the Friends group have gotten this information, but we were told this morning that all of the Friends groups do show a balance of somewhat. In the meeting, the branch manager was using the word surplus. The whole thing got very, very confusing. And we don't want this level of confusion to be out there. Related to this, and I think it's a topic possibly for our next Finance Committee meeting. The branch manager told me this morning that all of the Friends gifts are considered under the gift policy, which I had never heard before. So rather than a librarian, in my experience, librarian would come and say, I'd like $49 and so $49,000 for bookshelves or something like that. The assumption is that's what the money would be used for. What she told me this morning was that this is actually, once the check is written from the Friends, any Friends, to the library, it's a gift and it's discretionary. So I want to talk about that or get some clarification on that. And also for sure see that report and see how I'm sure, what I'm talking about, how this is allocated. So anyway, but I am a little troubled by certainly by what happened this morning and at the last meeting and getting clarification for all of us who deal with, Friends groups.
Okay,
Yeah, I think this is all beyond what we can discuss here. Today, it's not on the agenda. We have Brown Act problems if we go on any further. What I hope Myrna and her crew will do is get on top of this so we can understand the terminology, how the money flows, who's confused about what. I mean, these are not paid library staff who do this. and they don't follow the procedures that you follow, I'm sure. So let's see if we can get something going here for next.
Sure, we will. May I? We will, I'll have this on the agenda for May, so you all get a report here directly and we could go through those balances. I have reported in the mid-year and at the budget workshop that we have a new process for the Friends. That those balances had been reconciled and that the presentations were happening. So enough on that. We'll put it on the agenda for next year for detail and walking you, the
Next month.
finance committee, through it next month. But I would like to mention that the commission has approved a gift and donations policy. So it is posted. Friends donations are treated as earmarks, so they're not discretionary unless they donate and do not state a specific purpose. But we normally, each Friends group administers it a little differently. Some Friends groups have a letter and it specifies what it's for. But every time we should have what we call a blue form that states exactly what the purpose is for. And we track each of the Friends donations by branch with a project code so that we can monitor and track those funds. That reconciliation had not been done for several years, I don't know, 4 years or something like that. So as you can imagine, like a few things during the pandemic, things have just not quite followed protocol. So, that's why we had to reconcile and put together a process, tighten it up, train the branch managers on the procedure for receiving and recording Friends donations.
Barbara?
But just to your point, David, I know that it kind of got broad, but I felt like I brought it up properly as a report because it was one of our reports. And when we decided not to look at every single report every single time or even quarterly, I don't know that we even discussed that report because it's kind of like now it's not part of the mix. And so that was part of what the problem was, that it didn't come back to us to understand before it went out through the staff, to the Friends. So I'm only saying that I would like to talk about or have you every month or every quarter bring that report back so that we all really understand.
We have that report now, so can we add it to the
Yes.
quarterly
we can.
review?
Yes, we can. And
Okay.
yes, so we have a process to actually now monthly reconcile that, which had not been done like for stretches of time.
And I feel comfortable from the last time we reviewed it that you had gotten it under control. It sounds like there's a significant misunderstanding out in the branches about how the Friends gifts are supposedly not being allocated when in fact they are.
Well, I think in an ideal world, because we asked the question here at the finance committee meeting with that on that report, it would have come back to us, reported back to us, this is what we've done. This is what the reports look like now. It's all been cleaned up and, reallocated and everything. It got messy because of the way it was then presented to the Friends. I felt, and then this extra level, which again, we won't go into, but whether these things are earmarked or discretionary, that's when we get into the gift policy thing. And I don't know that gift policy is something for us to talk about, although it does include money. So, maybe it is our topic here, but.
Deborah?
Well, we have a development manager, so I think that probably Craig can help sort these things out. And I'm not sure that Perhaps the rest of the commission needs to hear this too, but I'm not sure that this necessarily, I mean, yes, it's numbers and yes, we're tracking dollars, but I'm not sure that this is only responsibility of the finance committee.
Yeah, all of this is out of order, very much out of order. Nothing on this was posted 72 hours in advance. Contrary to the Brown Act requirements. And I don't like to be ambushed in a meeting with complex, mysterious stuff without any written documentation, without it having gone through the appropriate staff channel. So I think we should just
Fair enough.
stop
So
talking.
what I'm gonna ask, and I think we're actually doing this a little bit out of order, but I'm gonna ask Lisa that we add this to the agenda for next month, that will, Myrna, if you and your team, normally we wouldn't do a comprehensive financial report review next month, but let's include this item. I think we're gonna all remember that it's now been cleaned up and reconciled. We can refresh and remind ourselves about what it tracks. And if you could share the appropriate policy or procedure with us just for our edification so that we can feel confident, I think we'll all feel better about it. And I don't think we can say anything more about it now. Okay. Are there any other questions or comments about the financial reports that we do have? Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next agenda item, which is the date of the May Finance Committee meeting. It's currently scheduled for Monday, May 15th, and I'd like to move it back a week so that I can attend. Can we move this to the following Monday, May 22nd?
Probably.
Mhm.
I've got a big thing at the library, but probably be done by 3.
Dave, are you okay with it? Okay. Lisa, if you could make that change, please.
Yes, I can make that change.
And then we've added an item to the agenda. Is there anything else you would like to add to the agenda for next month's meeting? Myrna did mention we will be looking at the 5-year projections. Anything else that you'd like to see? I'm glad that you're meeting with the Measure Y committee to go over the proposed budget. Let me ask this. We will be meeting as a commission on June 7th to approve the budget. I think that in general, the commission relies on this committee for guidance and confidence relating to financial matters. And we do have several new members of the commission. Is there anything that you feel we should review or discuss at the next finance committee meeting so that you can individually feel comfortable and confident assuring the other members of the commission that they can approve the upcoming budget? Do we need to review anything? Barbara?
I don't know about reviewing anything. When new commissioner from Cloverdale mentioned to me that she thought the budget workshop was so helpful because it really was instructive about operations and departments and
Yeah.
the structure of the operation. So she found it really helpful. I think that it's always important to link the budget to our priorities. And in the past, the priorities came more from the commission. And we now have our reimagining plan. And so that's where our priorities have come from. So I think that it's important to point that out. I think it was pretty much pointed out in the budget workshop. But that's something to just make sure that that everybody new joining in really understands that it's not, that there really is a connection between the priorities of the organization and the budget, how we spend our money. I don't know how we do that, and that's any
Well,
better than it was already done, but.
I would feel comfortable adding that as an item. I thought it was well covered. But I think it would be worth taking a few minutes to review that. So that we're all feeling completely confident and comfortable that we have a budget that's not just balanced, but is also aligned with the strategic priorities of the organization. So can we add that as an agenda item as well? I don't think there's any new work that has to be done for this, Myrna, but I think that you and Erica can review and highlight for us the kind of the big picture message that you started the budget workshop with.
Of the priorities.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all. We're not asking for anything new, but we covered we had a great, I think, a very solid big picture presentation, followed by, as Barbara said, a good presentation from each department. I think it would be great to take the step back and say, let's now remind ourselves how this supports our priorities as we discussed. I don't think we have to spend a lot of time on it, but some time has passed. And I think if the four of us feel comfortable about that, it will help other commissioners to feel that way too. Deborah?
Not to bring up a huge issue, but I think the new commissioners probably don't know about the pensions and, that funding as well as the rest of us do. And so spending, 5 to 10 minutes just to describe it to them, or just so that they know that we're not a usual library system. We are a standalone system, and so the pension funding is our responsibility. And I'm not sure they know that yet. So if they do, that's great. And we can only spend 2 minutes on it, but
Is that something you'd like us to discuss next?
I don't think,
month,
so.
or is it
I think we
as
just,
part of the?
just as part of the overall budget approval and that.
Oh, I
kind of
see.
thing. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Just so that we remind them that it's done.
And I think it would be I know we have a training session that we're scheduling for September. I think that's got to be something that we're reviewing there. Yeah, Barbara.
Well, there's always, our favorite issue of the unrestricted, unbudgeted funds. I never say that term correctly, but our almost $17 million.
The uncommitted fund balances.
Uncommitted fund balance. And, I don't know whether to get into that there. I mean, the timing isn't exactly lining up with our 5-year plan and our discussions about what we're going to do with some of that money. Doesn't quite line up with our time frame here for passing the budget. But it's something that obviously all commissioners need to really understand what that money is for. And we haven't even quite decided how it will be spent. So I don't know.
I think it will be
I know.
part of the 5-year projection,
Right.
won't it, Myrna?
But we won't have the 5-year plan done and discussed here even before we're going to pass the budget. So you're talking about how to present the budget, right?
I'm just, the budget's already been presented. I'm just talking. And maybe I don't want this to come across the wrong way. It's not like I think that we're, that I personally am so important or we're so important. I feel like the other commissioners who don't spend as much time looking at the numbers in some ways take cues from us as to, are we confident that we have a solid, well thought out budget that aligns with strategic priorities of the library? And if we can all enthusiastically say, yes, we are, we've reviewed it, we feel comfortable with it, I think we're going to have no trouble approving it. That's all. I think it will help. I don't know that we won't have finalized the 5-year projections, but we will get a chance to review them next month. And as we discussed, there's a lot of uncertainty, right? Depending on what happens with Measure Y renewal. But I think that will address in some ways that it will certainly take a closer look at the uncommitted fund balances. So why don't we, yeah,
And the OPEB stuff, the OPEB stuff, we can put that off to September too. You're
Okay.
absolutely right.
okay. Lisa,
As simple as it.
I just have a question for the last agenda item you requested. What kind of title are you envisioning for that agenda item? Just so I can-
review of proposed budget and alignment with strategic priorities and reimagining plan.
Thank you.
Is that okay? Yeah. Anything else? All right, it's 4:04 and we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.